It's Jill, and I am here to lead you through one of our projects that's going to be pre-cut for convention. First of all, congratulations and welcome. We are so happy that you have chosen to be here for convention. This is going to be an amazing time. We're happy to be sharing it together. Although virtually, we are just happy that we can all come together to celebrate this whole year, all that we've been through, all that's coming in this amazing catalog, and all the fun products that we are going to be revealing during the next week, I guess it will be, for 3 full days together. We're just happy to be connecting and be back together. And the projects, you are going to love them. I'm so excited. And today we're going to take time to cut through the prep steps for one of our creative projects. So I have done this in preparation, and without talking, as I just cut through it, it took me about an hour total. So about 20 minutes to get through the straight cuts, which I am going to lead you through right now, start to finish the straight cut. So we'll do that together. Then there's about 40 minutes worth of die cutting. I promise it's all worth it. It pays off in the end because these cards are amazing. And so we are going to take the time to do the die cutting. And since so many of them are just making multiples, because this workshop, again, makes 4 each of 3 different designs of cards. So you have multiple options. If you don't want to make 4 each of the 3 designs, you can just cut through the pieces that you need to make 1 or 2 sets. If you're wanting to use your paper in other ways, if you are wanting to make the entire set of the 12 cards, then you're going to do all the steps that I'm going to talk you through today. And then I'm going to show you what needs to be die cut. But when there's time to crank through multiple sheets, I'm just going to have you pause this cutting video, finish those pieces for that step, then unpause the video, and I'll walk you through the next one. So that way you don't have to listen to me or watch me crank over and over and over for the same things that are duplicates. So hopefully that's going to help you in being able to pause this video, take as much time as you need to get it exactly where you want it to be, and then unpause for the next step. So that's how we're going to proceed. And to get started, we are going to sneak into our convention bundle. So I have that right here. And what we are going to be cutting down for this project are the Celebrating Today papers. This is like so exciting because it's your first time seeing it. And I know some people want to wait for the convention unveil and getting to walk through the bundles with Monica, which is so fun. But if you want to be prepared for the Create and Take, then you do kind of need to bust in early and get excited about what you're finding here in advance. So this is Celebrating You. The papers are gorgeous. I'm not going to take the time to ooh and ah over each of them, even though I want to, and I know you do as well. But you have a full pack of that in here. And what you're going to need will just be pieces of this paper. So we will just go ahead and set this aside for just a minute. And then you need the cardstocks as well. And there are more cardstocks in here than what you are specifically using. There are a mix of Celebrating Today and some other fun cardstocks we're using on the other projects that Christina and Karen will also be walking you through to cut down. So let's go ahead and pull out just the sheets that we need for the cutting. So from the paper pack, because we're doing multiple projects with this same paper, you need 1 sheet of this argyle paper with the words on the back. You're going to work through 1 sheet of that. There's 1 sheet of the balloons with the fun little starbursts on the back. You need 1 sheet of that. We're going to cut through 1 sheet of the stripes. That has a plaid on the back, so fun. You need 1 piece of the ombre with the presents on the back, and 1 piece of this plaid with the polka dots on the back, and we need 1 piece of this honey butter. Honey butter might be a new word to you, and it has the presents on the back. So the rest of the pattern paper you can set aside, because we'll be using that on another project. Then from the cardstock, we need the glacier cardstock, which is under here. We need 2 sheets of glacier. Okay, 2 sheets of glacier for this project. You need 1 sheet of honey butter. That's this one right here. And you need 2 sheets of French vanilla. 1, 2. So then the rest of this cardstock is for another project. So you should have your 6 sheets of pattern paper. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, 6 sheets of pattern paper. And then you should have 5 sheets of cardstock. 2 glacier, 1 honey butter, 2 French vanilla. Those are the pieces that we're going to be cutting. The only other thing you need out of the bag for now, so the rest of it you can kind of leave for later if you can stand to keep it hidden, is your stamp set called You Deserve It All. This is our interactive stamp and thin cut. And then you have another thin cut in there called the pull tab. And I'm going to be teaching you all about the pull tab at this convention. And once you learn it, you're going to love how it works. So pull these out because we will be doing all the straight cuts and all the thin cuts for this project to get you all set. Okay, we are ready then to start cutting the paper. So hopefully you also have your instructions. I will be walking you through it, but you'll also want to be able to reference this. This is my massive copy, but that's super helpful to see. So you're going to want to pull up the Celebrating You instructions, and we will be walking through the cutting of these few sheets. And you can see there's straight cuts, and then there's some die cutting. So if you get lost or anything as we're going through the process, this is your reference, this is your guide, and it's exactly what I'm following through to help you as we go. Okay, from there we need a paper trimmer. Okay, I've got my paper trimmer, and we are going to start with this yellow honey butter piece. Go ahead and cut those zip strips off. Set those aside. And the first thing we're going to do is 4 pieces that are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So card fronts, I'm going to go ahead and turn the paper over so that I'm cutting the words running horizontally as if I were reading them. So I'm going to go to 4 1/4. I'm going to go 4 1/4 again. And I'm going to turn these and cut them at 5 1/2. There's 1. Again, makes 2. This piece would be a scrap. Then this piece will cut 5 1/2. And 5 1/2 again. This piece is a scrap. So all 4 of these pieces, we are actually going to use the back side, which is that fun floral. You could go either way. You could make half of your cards one and half the other if you wanted. I'm going to go ahead and label all these on the word side as piece 3A. So let's keep track of all the things as we go. And there are 3 total cards. You're going to make 3 piles. So that is for project number 3. Now we should have this much of our 12 by 12 sheet left, and we're going to go ahead and cut this down to 2 1/2 inches wide. 2 1/2. Then this is a scrap, a perfect fun 12-inch scrap. Then we're going to turn this, and we need to cut, I need to remind myself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 8 strips that are 1 inch each. So we're going to cut at 1 inch, and I just push it through and use this end of my paper trimmer to keep doing 1 inch pieces. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. One more is 8. Okay, this is a scrap you can set aside. And then these, we are using the front side with the fun little words on it. So on the present side, you can label these to B. 8 times. We're gonna label these. And you don't have to, you could label one and just keep them all together in a stack if that's helpful enough, but just in case they get lost from one another, I'm going to label each of them. Or my guess is after I've made these cards as many times as I have, Christina or Karen or Monica might want to make them, and these pieces will be labeled for them. So next we're going to go to the balloon paper. I love this one, and I hope as you start to look through this kit that you can see the versatility of it, that it is a beautiful birthday collection. There is some very fun blues in here, which make it really nice for masculine cards or birthday celebrations, but the colors of the yellow and the bright fun works for anything and anyone. And there's so many papers in here that don't scream birthday that you can use it in so many ways. Like, you're gonna love being able to play with it. I'll talk more about that at convention. I keep forgetting we've got so much time to talk about all these fun details. Okay, so we're going to put our present or our balloon paper in facing vertically, and we are going to cut it at 3 3/4. Okay, so 3 3/4, just right. And we're going to cut this down. Then we are going to turn and cut at 2 3/4. So then I am using this end of my paper trimmer to go 2 3/4. There's 1. Again, that's 2 3/4. 3. And 4. So this little inch is a scrap. Using the balloon side. So I'm going to put all these pieces over and label it. Oh no, we're using the back side. So label the balloon side 2E. Love that back side too. I think that's just such a fun, almost feels like a polka dot, but it's got all kinds of personality happening in that. So this is the side we'll be using with that fun pattern, and that's 2E. Okay, come back to the remaining balloon paper, and we are going to cut 3 inches. Now then this is going to be cut at 5 1/8. So 1/8 is just 2 little markings on your paper trimmer over. 5 1/8. 5 1/8. This is a scrap. So these should be your balloons vertical, 3 inches by 5 1/8. Then you're going to put this piece and do the exact same thing because we need 4 of them. So we'll cut at 3 inches. This is a fun scrap that you'll have. And we're going to turn this and cut it at 5 1/8. We're going to cut again at 5 1/8. And this is a scrap. So now I have 4 pieces that are 3 by 5 1/8, and we're going to label them 3E using the balloon side. So label the little dot side. Okay, there's 3E. Now we're going to move on to this diamond pattern. And it has the words on the other side. So let's first trim up our zip strip. We're not using the zip strips on the cards, but they will be so fun to keep and use somewhere else. Now this piece, let's get the words going horizontal. And then we're going to cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch pieces. So card fronts again on this. So cut it 4 1/4, 5 1/2, one more, 5 1/2. This is a scrap. Try to do it one more time. 4 1/4. This whole piece is a fun scrap that you'll have. By 5 1/2. Again. And this card uses the diamond pattern on the front. So we're going to label the back side 1A. A, 4 pieces. Okay, and that was the diamond paper. So we are now moving on to the striped paper. I love this one. See how you could use this for so many themes? It's perfect. Okay, we're going to cut the zip strip off of this. Set that aside. And with the stripes running vertically is how we're going to cut this one. Same thing. 4 card fronts, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So 4 1/4, 5 1/2. Again, 5 1/2. Gives you that 1 inch little strip that you can save. 4 1/4 again. Got all of this that you can use. 5 1/2, 2 more times. And honestly, I practiced these on a fun Friday night to get familiar with the cards really well. And then when I got done, I saw how many scraps were left and I made the cutest layout. So maybe I'll bring it to convention because I was just like, this is so cute. I want to use it right now while it's all out. So maybe I'll bring it and show it to you as just like a fun bonus idea. It was just like my personal crafting time that I was like, this is too good to put away. I just wanted it to turn into something. All right, so this piece is 2A. And we're using the stripe side, but you can honestly, once you start making the cards, decide if you want stripes or plaids because it's just a beautiful pattern either way. So you can totally change that up if you want. All right, so now we're moving on to the second page of cuts on our cutting diagram. But we will be coming back to them when we do our die cuts. So the next one is the ombre with this fun tone-on-tone kind of present pattern on the front side. Cut off our zip strip, and then we are doing 4 cuts that are 3 3/4 wide by 5. So 3 3/4. And this is going to be cut down to 5 inches. Okay. 3 3/4. We'll do it again at 5 inches. This piece is a scrap, and then we'll do that one more time. 3 3/4. This whole piece is extra. We're going to turn it and put it on at 5 inches and 5 again. Okay, and all of these are piece 1C. So you can label that on the ombre side. 1C. You should have 4 pieces, 3 3/4 by 5. Okay, last piece of our pattern paper is this one. And we'll cut off the zip strip here. Then we're going to do 1/2 by 5 1/8. We're going to cut that 8 times. So here's what I'm going to suggest you do is go ahead and cut a 1/2 inch, slide it, cut a 1/2 inch, slide it, and a 1/2 inch, slide that, and a 1/2 inch one more time. Will give us 4 1/2 inch strips. They look like zip strips at this point. Then you're going to cut them at 5 1/8. So you can put multiple in here at a time if you want. I normally do that because then I can, even if you need to tack them down, or you can lay them in here, but I'm going to cut them one at a time in case you're following along and just want to do one strip at a time. You're going to make 1 5/8. 2 of those will come out of each strip to give us a total of 8. But yeah, if you want to, you can stack them, cut through them all at the same time, whatever you feel most comfortable doing. Oh, there's lots of tips and tricks to help you get through cutting things faster. Sometimes it's just easier to play it safe and get them all just right. So we'll cut this at 5 1/8 is what these strips are. Next one. Okay, so now we have 8 of these. I'm not going to label them. 4 of them are 3C, 4 of them are 3D. But I'm going to just go ahead and put these stacks in my pile 3. You can label those if you want. Excuse me. 4 are piece 3C and 4 are piece 3D. All right, then we need 4 pieces that are 2 by 6. So I'm going to come in here and cut at 2 inches. Going to come again at 2 inches. Then all of this is a fun scrap. You can see what I mean. There's plenty of paper that you're going to be able to make even more fun things with this Celebrating You paper collection. This is 2 by 6 is what that ends up being. So you're going to cut those 2-inch strips into 6-inch pieces. And we are going to use the blue side or the sapphire side. And so the back side we can label as P2. Those are going to get die cut in just a minute. Then we're going to move on to our glacier cardstock. So first things first is we need pieces that are 4 pieces, 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. So 3 7/8 is 2 dashes before you get to the 4. So it's the same as, I always have to do the other math. So it's the same as 14/16, and each one of those is 16. That's how I know we talk about eyelashes, Karen, we all have different ways that we differentiate all the different measurements, but I always turn them into 16ths so I can think backwards on the math. So 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And you need 4 of those pieces. 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. That gives me 4. And we're going to use the light side of the glacier. Again, that's a personal preference thing. You can change any of this up if you want. So on the dark side, I'm labeling these 3B. Okay, now when we come back to this piece of glacier that we have left, we're going to cut 3 3/4 by 4 1/2. So 3 3/4 right here. And then 4 1/2. And this is a scrap. So these are both 2D. So label the dark side 2D. And we need 2 more of those, obviously. So we'll come on to our next piece of glacier. And we'll cut this at 3 3/4. 4.5. One more. So both of these are also 2D, and that gives us 4 of them. Make our duplicate cards. Okay, with the remainder of this glacier cardstock, we're going to cut it into 2-inch strips. So we're going to cut 2. And 2. You could technically just leave this since we're putting it through a die cut, but it's easier to work with all the same size pieces when you're doing the die cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and still trim that. And then we're cutting at 6. So these are, we're just creating stacks that we're going to be able to die cut to make our multiples. Oops. So we're cutting these 2-inch strips down into 6-inch pieces. And last one. And all of these go in P1. I'm not going to label them. We're going to die cut them in just a minute. So just know that the entire stack all goes, oh, sorry, 4 of them are for project 1 and 4 are for project 3. So if you've got your separate piles put out, you can put 4 of them with pile 1 and 4 of them with pile 3, and then we're going to die cut those. Okay, honey butter is next. Beautiful new color. And this one is getting 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 again. So 3 7/8, 5 1/8, and 1/8 again. One more time. 3 7/8, 5 1/8. And the rest of this honey butter is scraps, and these are piece 1B, and we're going to use the darker side. So on the lighter side, you can label these 1B. And we are on to our last 2 sheets, which are French vanilla. So this first one, we're going to cut off 3/4 of an inch. So when I do that, I use the inside of my paper trimmer, go to 3/4, and then we need 4 pieces that are 3 inches, which is exactly what you'll get out of this 12-inch strip. So we'll cut it at 3, 3 again, and 3 one more time. Gives us 4 pieces that are 3 inches by 3 3/4. So these are all 1D. 1D, 1D. There we go. Now, from the remaining of that cardstock, oh, I put it back in my pile. Couldn't find it. From the remainder of this, we're going to cut 4-inch strips, or like 11 by 4. So right now it's 3/4. You can cut it to 11. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you have that extra 1/4 of an inch because we're just using this for die cutting. But if you're following the cutting guide exactly, we'll cut it down to 11 so that now this is 11 inches wide. You're going to cut it at 4 and 4 again. And then this last piece is already 4, and then we're going to cut it in half. So you can cut this at 5 1/2. Okay, so these 2 are going to stack on top of each other, and they're for project number 3. So on the back, just to keep these pieces all straight, if you want, you can label these P3. And this one is 4 by 5.5. We cut those down and those are going to stack together. So you can put those with project 3. Now these two that are 11 by 4, we are going to just fold in half to duplicate these dies. So I'm just going to fold it in half, crease it so that I can add it through my die cut machine when we're ready to do that. And these are going to be mixed for project 1 and project 2. So just go ahead and set these aside and we'll use them on our die cuts in just a minute. That's what we're doing with the rest of our paper. So our French vanilla now is going to get cut down. You're going to cut it 5.5. And we're going to cut this at 4 all the way through. So 3 pieces that are 5.5 by 4, 5.5 by 4, and there's 3 that are 5.5 by 4. Now do the same thing here so that we have 6 total pieces that are 5.5 by 4. The science that went behind the way the mechanism works on these dies, which is so fun, is a really cool thing we can talk about during convention. And then the science that is a cutting diagram. I'm sure so many of you know that from all of your experience in workshop creation. But now you've got 6 pieces that are 5.5 by 4. So go ahead and set those aside. They all go to different pieces. So once we die cut them out, we'll put them where they need to go. So if you've gotten to this point, you have done all of the straight cutting. Excellent job. Thanks for joining us for that. Now we're going to just get out our die cut machine and cut out the pieces that we need to create the dies and build the interactive cards. So I'm going to switch gears and grab our die cut machine. Get a good arm workout today. So go ahead and grab your die cut machine. And I like to use the magnet base for this. You don't have to. And then some washi tape. Washi tape or some other way to hold these dies in place is going to be key on this die cut project, because while the magnet board holds things in place, you know, it can still wiggle from time to time, and you don't want any wiggle on these. Because of the mechanism and the science behind how these cards work, you're going to want to make sure that they are kind of as close to exact as you can. I'm going to show you the 3 cards really quickly so that you can understand kind of what we're doing and how we're building them. So this card, you can see, we are going to create all the pieces that allow us to have this interactive element happening. They're so fun, and once you've made it once, then you're a pro and you can make them over and over. And that's what we've done here, is use that same mechanism on all the different designs. So as we go through die cutting, I'm going to tell you some of the things to watch for and how to help you in the process of creating these. So here is one I can show you that like I messed up, which I think is helpful to know because messing up doesn't ruin anything for the most part. So I used too long of a slider die, which I'll show you in a minute. And so when I used the one that was too long, you can see that my present pops all the way out and you can see the little slit a little bit. That's all that happened. So it's by no means ruined. Whoever gets this card may pull it all the way up and see that and not have a problem. You can still slide it right back in. They're just made, if we do them just right, they'll raise just that much and go back down. So I just want you to see that even though there's some technical details, everything will be fine if you don't get them exacting. It will just do a few little things that, you know, that don't hurt anything, but might help you if you know how they're all coming together. So hopefully that's helpful. We are going to start with piece 2E. So that's this one with the balloons. Okay, piece 2E. Then you're going to grab your die cuts, and I have an open set right here I'm going to grab. So these are the dies that we're working with, the presents and the pull tabs. So go ahead and get these open and ready. See? Always these little details you just have to fuss with when you're live on a camera. Okay, and then our pull tabs. So this is what I'm talking about right here. You can see, goodness gracious. There we go. You can see there's 3 different lengths that are going to give you that little slider mechanism. So I'll tell you as we're cutting which ones to use, but that's the only thing is I had used this long one where I should have used the medium one. And so it let my card, my present part, slide out more than it needed to. That's why we've given you the 3 different sizes based on how much movement you want that present to have. So that's what this is. This is the piece that's going to build the actual pull tab, just so you know what you're working with, because I think that's helpful to know. That's what this piece is right here. This is just a little notch that we're going to be able to put right in here. And then this piece is going to give us a band that holds this strip in place so that it doesn't wiggle left to right. So that's what happens with the pull tab. And I'll teach it all to you during convention. But as you're cutting, I think it's helpful to like picture what's happening and why and how it all comes together. So these pieces, in the cutting diagram, we said not to stack them because it does matter very much that your little slot and your circle are centered. Now I did stack mine because I was able to tape them directly to the magnet mat. So you can choose whichever way you want to do this. I thought it was still worthwhile to cut 2 at a time, but then what I did, let me scoot this over. So, camera space. So I took 2 pieces. This is just up to you. I took 2 pieces, matted it down, and I put washi tape on the stack before even putting my dies on. That way, the stack of 2 didn't move. So I did this, and that allowed me to cut 2 at a time. If you're worried about that, then just do 1 at a time. But this is where we are going to talk through what to do, and then you can pause and move on and pause until you're ready to move on to the next step. So you are going to put a 1.5 inch slot. You're going to want to have a ruler, and we are coming up on this piece. You're going to come up 1 inch from the bottom. So I'm going to mark this at 1 inch. Just give yourself a little pencil mark, and then, oh, you know what? I want these on the balloon side. No? Yes. Okay. There we go. I am cutting it on the side because then I don't want the die marks to be backwards. Okay. So I have the side we're going to use upright. Then I've come up 1 inch from the bottom, and then you need this centered, which is 1 3/8 over, which is about where my dot is. Okay, so that little dot is 1 inch from the bottom and centered left to right, which is 1 3/8. From there, that's where you take your 1.5 inch slot. So if ever you're getting confused, you can measure these and make sure you're using the one that is 1.5 inches long, which is the middle-sized one. Okay, now this is going right up through the center of these pieces of paper. So again, get that exactly where you want it. Then just take a tad bit of washi tape to hold it from sliding left to right. So that should be 1 inch from the bottom, centered left to right. Then you're going to take your little notch die and place it right on top. Those are our die cut pieces. The notch at the top and our slit. Okay, I'm cutting 2 pieces at a time, and you're going to do this to all 4 pieces of 2E. Okay, piece 2E gets this treatment on all 4 pieces. So we'll go ahead and crank this through, and then you can pause the video and come back when you are ready to move on to the next die cut piece. Okay, so now if you've gone through and done those cuts, you should have 4 pieces that look like this. A little slot and a little notch off the top, and that is piece 2E. So now that those are cut, you can put those back in the pile. Hopefully that wasn't too hard. We're going to move on and do the exact same thing on a different piece for card 3. We're going to grab the pieces that are 3E. So the balloons. So same exact thing, we're just going to do a few different measurements because of the size of the paper. So I'm going to put my 2 sheets down, and if that worked okay for you, you can do it again. If you need to do one at a time, that's why we're making it so you can pause the video if you need to. We are using the 1.5 inch slot maker again, and if you noticed, the little paper sometimes stays lodged in the little track. So if you use your piercing tool, or your pokey tool as we lovingly call it here, you can poke through those little holes in your die. That's what those are for, to help you pop out that negative space. So I kind of find that I need to do that every time because it does like to really stay in there. Okay, so I've got my paper. This is piece 3E, again, just to be sure. And you're going to come up 1.5 inches from the bottom this time. So at 1.5 inches, make a little mark, and then it should be 1.5 inches from the left and right, because this is a 3-inch wide piece of paper. Ooh, I did a good job eyeballing. That is at 1.5 inches. So from there, you're taking the same slider, the 1.5 inch slider is going, the base of it goes right on that marking that you made at 1.5 inches left to right and 1.5 inches from the bottom. So you just want that slider to be as vertical and straight as possible. Then you can tape on your little notch tool, and you are going to cut this so that you have 4 identical pieces. So go ahead and take piece 3E, send it through your die cut machine so that you have 4 pieces. Okay, if all went as planned, you should have 4 pieces that have the little slider track and the little notch out of the top, and those can go back into pile number 3, because that is piece 3E. All right, moving on to the next thing that needs die cutting. It's our last one of the notch and slider cuts. So on piece 1C, which is this one right here with the little presents, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and place this and tape it down so I can do 2 at a time. Hopefully that's going well for you. I so far have not had any of that slide when I tape the 2 pieces down. And this time you're going to use the 2-inch slot. So that one is the longest of the 3. So go ahead and take this notch tool, or this slider tool, and you are going to measure 1.5 inches from the bottom of the paper. Put the tool right there. 1.5 inches. And then you want it centered, which is 1 7/8. Perfect. So 1 7/8 from the left or right, and 1.5 inches from the bottom, and this time it is the 2-inch slot. So go ahead and place the 2-inch, tape that down, get it as straight as possible. And honestly, if it's a tiny bit crooked, all it means is your present just wiggles up a little, but it will fit in the box and work just great. Just try to be as exacting as possible, but there is a little margin for error there. So don't stress too much. Then I've got my notch tool taking out half of the top of that piece. You are going to crank this through now and make sure that all 4 pieces of 1C are cut with the 2-inch slider and the notch tool at the top. So pause now, come back when you've got that step done. All right, if that went okay, you should have 4 pieces of 1C that look like this. They'll have the 2-inch notch, 1.5 inches from the bottom, and the little scoop at the top, and that is piece 1C. So those are the 3 cuts we're going to do that use the sliding mechanism and the notch tool. So now we're going to move on to the other die pieces, which are going to help us actually make the slider itself. So we are moving on to our pieces from the blue sapphire dot paper. It's for P2, and that was this one right here. Okay. Now these you can for sure stack. So even if you were worried and doing those one at a time on the last one, these, it does not matter as long as the piece stays within the pattern paper, you're going to be just fine. So we went ahead and stacked this. You can tape it down again if you want, but really the magnetic cutting mat holds this in place, and you're going to take this entire sliding mechanism, and then I'm going to place that down just a little, move my washi tape, and you are going to cut this 4 times or 2 times if you're stacking. So piece P2, the 2 by 6 inch strips of this pattern paper, you're going to cut 4 times. So pause this, make 4 cuts, and then come back as soon as that's ready. Okay, if you're back to the video, you should have 4 pieces that look just like this out of this pattern paper, the notch or the slider mechanism, and this is for project number 2. Our next thing we're going to do is that exact same cut on 8 pieces. So it should be your glacier cardstock, and you should have 8 total pieces, 4 for project 1 and 4 for project 2. So we're going to do that exact same thing. You can use 2 pieces at a time. If you're using this handy dandy die cut machine, 2 pieces works great. You're going to take the slider mechanism. I like to put just a tiny bit of washi tape to hold that in place. You're going to crank this through until you have 8 total pieces, 4 for project 1, 4 for project 2. So pause, make 8 of these, and then come back. Okay, if you are joining back, you should have 8 pieces of glacier cardstock, 4 for project number 3, 4 for project number 1 of those slider mechanisms. Doing good so far, hopefully. The next thing we're going to do is take those 11 by 4 inch pieces that we folded in half. So you should have these 2 pieces. They're 11 by 4. Fold it in half, and then we're going to start cutting our presents that we're going to stamp and color with markers. There's 2 present shapes on the die, and then 1 rounded rectangle. Okay, so take the 2 present shapes, and you're going to cut 1 of each out of this folded cardstock. So again, you're going to do 1 of each die on both of these, so that will give you 4 total of each shape. So go ahead, pause, come back when you've cut this on both of the 11 by 4 pieces of French vanilla cardstock. Okay, if you've cut all of those, you should have 4 each of the 2 different shapes. So the present that has a flat bottom, a square bottom, this is for project number 2. So this gift right here that kind of looks like a T is project number 2. This other one, you should have 4 pieces of this as well. This one has like an extra little box on the bottom and is a little taller. This one is for project number 1. Okay, then moving on to those other 2 pieces that we put in project number 3. These are 5.5 by 4 inch pieces. This one is for project number 3, and that uses this present right here. It's the shorter one with the rounded square bottom, and we need 4 of just this one shape. So what we're going to do is stack our cardstock. These are the 5.5 by 4s. You're going to stack the cardstock and put on that present. So it's the shorter one, not this one. We don't use this one. We're just using this one, so you're going to crank it through once, scoot it over, crank it through here, and that will give you 4 of this one shape. So go ahead and make those 4 cuts, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, if you're back, you should have 4 pieces of this present shape right here for project number 3. So that's 4 pieces out of French vanilla. Now we are to our last die cutting piece. We're just going to make a slew of the same thing. And so you are going to take all the rest of the pieces. I believe there's 6 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are all 5.5 by 4-inch pieces. And on these pieces, you can take one, fold it in half, and on the one, you are going to cut the rectangle from the present, as well as this piece right here, which is going to create our band around the pull tab, okay, or around the slider. So this piece and this is getting put onto a 5.5 by 4-inch piece, folded in half. So just to double check, you should have a 5.5 by 4-inch piece, folded in half, add the rectangle die and the slider holder. I don't know, we didn't give all the dies their own individual names, but that's what that is. Just put a little washi to hold that in place, and you are going to crank this through on all 6 pieces folded in half. That will give you then 12 presents and 12 of these little bar pieces, okay? So all 6 of these pieces are going to get folded in half and cut this way. So that will give you 12. So go ahead, take a few minutes to crank all of those through, and you're just going to duplicate this effort until you have enough for 12 squares and 12 tabs. Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to prep all these pieces. I promise the interactive portion of this entire process will be so fun to learn and to give. That's really the best part, right? Is to see the reaction on the recipient's face when they get to try this fun interactive thing and find the fun surprise and see all the cool details that went into it and wonder how in the world you made it. And once we have convention, you're going to know exactly how to make this. So as we now have cut everything we need, we are prepared to make ourselves 3 piles, and so I just want to evaluate everything that goes with each card piece, and maybe you're going to want to put project number 1 in a bag, project number 2, project number 3, or at least clip them together or something so that when we go to create, we're going to make this project on Thursday, first create and take out of the gate. When we're together at convention, you'll have everything you need. So for project number 1, card number 1, you should have 4 pieces of this paper. It's labeled 1A, 4 pieces of this, 4 pieces of the honey butter, which is piece 1B. Stack that next. 4 pieces of 1C, which have been notched, and a slider put in place. 4 pieces of that. Then you should have all your pieces for the actual assembly, which are the 4 sliders. Then these 4 pieces go around the slider, so you should have 4 of these, 4 of the die cut presents, and then 4 of the present box. And you should have 4 of piece 1D, which is where our sentiment is going to go. So go ahead and take that stack. That is project number 1. Now, project number 2 is going to have piece 2A, which is this pattern paper, piece 2D, which is glacier cardstock. Then you've got, I think this is piece 2B, but this piece that we did the notch and slider in. Then you should have these pieces in the sapphire pattern paper that are going to be our slider, 4 of the slider holders, 4 of this present right here, 4 of the present box, and then you should have 8 pieces of 2B, which are out of this pattern paper right here. That is your stack for project number 2. So double check that you have everything for that. And then we're going to move on to project number 3, which is 3A, this piece, 3B, which is the glacier cardstock. Then our slider pieces, you should have 4 out of the balloon. Your slider mechanism out of glacier cardstock, 4 of these. You should have 8 half-inch strips of pattern paper, 4 of this present, 4 more boxes, and 4 more slider wrappers. And that is a wrap, friends. Thank you so much for taking some time to go ahead and prep your projects for Create and Take. It is going to make your convention experience all that much more enjoyable as we jump into now the fun part of learning how to make these slider cards happen, getting to color them, adding all the fun details, and building these 3 cards together. Can't wait till convention. We will see you so soon. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you at convention.